The Sentinel made a couple small replicas of the box, trying to remember how to make one. A few of them worked, but not well. He tossed them aside with all the other parts and instead tried to upgrade the small core he already had from his watch. He decided that keeping his box small would be helpful. As long as it was held in his pocket, he could flash away at will whenever he wanted. Nearly 2 weeks later, at merely half an inch by half an inch, the box's design was complete. He upgraded it with every feature of the previous box, including the AI. The cube surrounding the core was light blue, and the box itself was too small to comfortably fit the quarter circle designs. Instead, a singular dark blue circle took up most of the space of each of the 6 faces. Ayla complained that she liked the original better, and the Sentinel argued that looks didn't matter when it came to efficient time travel. He continued to work on the box, making it even better than the original. Early in the morning, after the box was finished, the Sentinel sat at the kitchen bar, enjoying the breakfast that Ayla had made for him. He had hardly engaged in any conversation with her in the time he spent rebuilding, but that day needed to be different. Hey. Yeah? Ayla finished preparing her coffee. How's Nick? Ayla paused. She adjusted her stance and took a deep breath. He's fine. He's 10 now, living with his grandfather in D.C. Ayla sipped her coffee. Why? She asked, leaning against the counter and holding the mug up to her face. Just want to make sure at least one of Amara's kids is safe, he chuckled, quickly losing his smile. I guess anyone's safe when they're away from me, huh? Ayla didn't respond. She avoided eye contact and continued drinking her coffee. She shook her head and put her mug down. Don't travel alone. It won't be good for you. If you really need to leave, I'll keep your stuff here, just in case. How'd you know I was leaving today? The Sentinel asked, sitting up straighter. You never talk, Ayla sighed. It's been lonely since Amara passed. I don't have to leave, the Sentinel suggested. No, you idiot, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I know how you feel. I know you'll try to find someone to travel with. That's how you live. I get that. But don't let what happened to Amara stop you from living. Right, I understand. The Sentinel got off the stool, standing. Thanks for everything. I'm sorry. No problem. Take care of yourself. The Sentinel nodded and waved an awkward wave. He flashed away. Janistar was a sight for sore eyes. The replacement city planet of Earth, previously owned by the late Lorinian Daru and given up to the Sentinel at the end of the war, had been waiting for his return. The Sentinel left it alone, abandoning it for 4 years. However, he found it appropriate to show up on the planet 4 years after the war, trying to stay consistent with the time he had aged, making his arrival year 3057. He wondered exactly how the planet had fared after the war without him. The capital city of Janistar, Uradau, was booming with life. The Andromedan culture seemed tightly woven into the Wayan culture thanks to Daru. The Sentinel saw a few signs and advertisements calling Janistar a better Ilsos. He noticed that the city was still recovering from the damage after the Galactic War. No one recognized the Sentinel. It was as if he were invisible. Sometimes he would notice Andromedan humans pass by without batting an eye. It was a different feeling, and he enjoyed it. It was like he was normal again, not having a worry in his world. He decided to continue visiting bars whenever he went and settled with the first one he stumbled across. He was hoping to understand more about the post-war world. Who ran the planet following his absence? What do people assume happened to the Sentinel? How peaceful is everything, truly? The Sentinel didn't expect to come across the answers to all of these questions he had from a bar, but it was a start. He watched as aliens from around the galactic cluster came in and out of the bar. Small, 6-armed, ant-like bipeds with antlers, beings that closely resembled birds, and some that looked like humans came in and out. A few Lorinians of varying sizes were a common sight as well. Occasionally, an Andromedan would stop by, and scattered here and there, he would spot a human. The Sentinel tried to listen in on as many conversations as he could, despite not understanding Andromedan, French, or some language entirely alien. A band of the small, ant-like antlered aliens played throughout the night. The Sentinel didn't enjoy the music, as the sound of over-instrumentalized cricket noises wasn't too appealing, but it faded into the background as the night continued. He tried watching the news, but he couldn't understand it. Satisfied by his results, getting about what he expected out of the visit, he was feeling like it was about time to leave. But then a conversation caught his attention, echoing in his mind as he heard English spoken for the first time in that bar. Hey, what do you think you're doing? Yelled the bartender, a humanoid figure made of crystal and stone. The Sentinel turned his attention. He couldn't help but be attracted to conflict, even in the state of relative peace for him. The bartender was being pushed back from across the counter by an Andromedan. Not just any Andromedan. A clone. To the Sentinel's knowledge, the only surviving clone after the Purge was Vax's co-pilot, Foxtrot. He watched and listened closely, intensely intrigued. You said you'd have the money for the king by yesterday, man. Where is it? The clone interrogated the bartender. He glanced around nervously, as if afraid of being watched. I have it with me, but they've upped security on the planetary border. It's hard to transport. The bartender tried to bargain. Hard to transport? Dumbass, how did I get here then? They have no idea I'm here. Do you not know how to use the transport routes or what? The clone pushed him again. Aggro, listen. I can't get caught. I have a family. Don't pull the family card, man. Vistor needs the money. If I don't get it to him, my boss will have me executed. Becoming less of a use to him already as is. Just turn in the money. I know you have it. This will benefit you as much as it will me if you just give Vistor the Sornos. No, I can't. I swear. The bartender backed away, stopped by the confined area behind the counter. The clone reluctantly started to reach for a holstered pistol, and no one else in the bar seemed to care. All right. The Sentinel stood up. That's enough. Crowds turned their attention to the Sentinel. The Alliance may have fallen, but there's something fishy going on here, isn't there? The Sentinel stepped closer to the clone. Go home. The clone stared down the Sentinel, blinded in one eye by a scar. His stare seemed more intense. Who do you think you are? This isn't your business. I'm the Sentinel. The universe is my business. The Sentinel stood tall. You're the Sentinel? The bartender said, hopeful. Where have you been? He beamed with excitement. The bar erupted. Is that really the Sentinel? I thought he died. Also, you gave Sos. That can't be him. The Sentinel died after the war. You can't be him, the clone argued, confident in his statement, but his face almost instantly changed with some sort of instant flow of reluctant hope in his eyes. Right? He questioned himself. The Sentinel flared his fist with plasma, claiming, Dying isn't really my style. The clone withdrew 2 pistols and combined them. They started to transform into a rifle, but the Sentinel caught it in his hands before it could. He burned through the rifle, and the pieces fell to the ground. The clone ran, but the Sentinel grabbed the collar of his uniform and pulled him back. The clone tried to punch the Sentinel, but he caught his fist in his flaming hand. Ah! The clone stumbled back and shook his hand. He ran out of the bar, pushing a small green antlered insect alien as he left. The alien mumbled something to himself bitterly. Get back here! The Sentinel ran after him. He chased the clone around the city until he lost him at an 8-way intersection. Thousands of thoughts raced through his mind, and although conflict excited him, he was worried that maybe the war he ended might only be over as seen from the surface. All right, he whispered to himself. Then he heard a blast near an alleyway, which drew him toward it. He sprinted down the alleyway and stared at the end of it, which seemingly stopped at a dead end. Ahead of him, in a brick wall, was one abnormal brick with a fresh hand-shaped bloodstain stamped on it. Box? He called attention to his time machine.
Yes, Sentinel.
The box floated from the Sentinel's pocket, whizzing by his ear like a passively buzzing bee. Scan the wall. The Sentinel gestured toward the brick wall. The box hovered in front of it and scanned it with a light blue laser grid. It stopped before ramming into the brick wall, pushing the brick inward. The wall began to separate as the bricks revealed themselves to be camouflaged metal sliding door. Just as the door finished sliding open, it revealed a glowing door ahead of the Sentinel. He opened it, revealing a wormhole-like portal standing upright on the other side. He stared into the portal and saw its destination, which seemed very similar to the capital city of Janistar. He cautiously stepped through the portal, which didn't close behind him. Instead, he appeared in a mirrored alleyway. A metal sliding door covered the portal behind him, quickly disguising itself as a brick wall. Instead of the blue and pink neon lights and the blacks and grays of the city, the Sentinel was met with the grimy browns, grays, and orange neon lights of tall and slanted towers and skyscrapers, all of which were gaudily decorated in colorful neon signs advertising many things. The narrow brown buildings were pushed up next to each other. Everything was as compact as possible. The roads and sidewalks were the dirtiest the Sentinel had ever seen. The city itself seemed to be the embodiment of rust and old age. He stepped out onto the streets, cautiously and hesitantly. Lyrinians, Daru species, roamed the streets casually. They seemed to be the majority. The only constant in the species were the 6 stubby arms and bulbous eyes. The number of eyes seemed to vary. All Lyrinians were slug-like with varying widths. Some had bug-like wings, and others were wingless. The Sentinel looked up at the sky. It was a dark and cloudy, swirling mush of dark blues and greens. But it seemed as though it was raining just above. The rain was a bright glowing orange, but it was contained in the stormy clouds. Not a sliver of sky shone through them, and the Sentinel began to wonder if there was even a sky at all. He shook his head before he started analyzing all the aliens and his surroundings any further, and got back to the task at hand. He ran down the sidewalk, leading to a massive palace-like building. It was the most pristine building in the area, comparatively speaking. It was a corner building at the intersection, curved on its edge, making the end almost a perfect triangle. The entrance itself was a plaza underneath an overhang held up by intricate pillars. On the overhang stood a massive, seemingly decorative triangular tower. The Sentinel approached the massive gate doors, but hesitated to open them when he spotted a wanted poster. He couldn't make out much from the Andromedan print besides the name 1AFTR and a picture of Foxtrot. He squinted at it, then stepped into the palace, swinging open the heavy wooden door. He poked his head in. He seemed to be interrupting a meeting. He jumped out from behind the door, ready for a fight. Agro, by any chance, would that happen to be the Sentinel? A Lyrinian spoke atop an extravagant throne, far from the entrance and sitting atop an unnecessarily long staircase. He blinked his 2 red bulbous eyes slowly and flapped his intricately patterned purple butterfly wings. A golden crown sat on his head. It baffled the Sentinel how it didn't slide off. Agro, the clone, turned around. Yeah, that's him. Sentinel! The gray Lyrinian, somewhat fatter than other Lyrinians the Sentinel had seen, slid off his throne and scooted his way over to the Sentinel. Agro, you must greet your guest with gratitude. The Lyrinian opened his arms outwards in a sort of comfort greeting. Vistor, if you don't mind, Agro began. Ahem, Vistor the Lyrinian interjected. Sorry, King Vistor, if you don't mind. That is the Sentinel you're talking to. You know, the war criminal. Most wanted across the galactic expanse. He's dangerous. That is precisely why we need him. You know full well Conscious quest for the secret weapon fell flat, Vistor pointed out. May I remind you again that Conchna is working on the weapon still, and it's basically ready. Aggro shuffled in his place. Don't you remember the whole thing with 1 AFTR? Hold on, if I can interject, man of the hour here. The Sentinel stepped forward and held up his hand halfway. Aggro stared at the Sentinel annoyed, and Vistor watched optimistically waiting for input. You want my help? Why? Also, Conchna? You talk about him like he's still alive. I could only sleep at night because I knew that I killed him. He is very alive, Aggro grumbled. Then how, in any capacity, would you think that I would join your side? The Sentinel asked. He waited, garnering no response. Vistor shrugged with all 6 of his appendages. I'll be leaving now. The Sentinel turned around. Before he left, he stopped. Before I go, where am I? Ilsos, Aggro answered angrily. Trash can of the Andromedan aristocrats and closest thing to hell you can find this side of the galaxy. Isn't Ilsos a gas planet? Not its core. Aggro stepped closer. Why would you need my help anyway? You don't have any enemies left except... me. The Sentinel looked away, intrigued. You're trying to get me on your side so I'm no longer a threat? An insurance policy? That doesn't make any sense either. I don't attack just to attack. But you are excellent at defending, Vistor clarified. An old business partner, a friend of mine, Daru, owned and sold planets by the hundreds under my careful watch and order. IS-1 all the way to IS-1982. And specifically, he owned a planet called IS-72. I don't know if you know or remember, but that planet is now known as Janistar. He had no right to give it away to Wayans, Vistor continued. It doesn't help with the trade deals here on Ilsos being associated with Wayans. What's so bad about the Wayans? Aggro stepped even closer still, feigning confidence and trying to be intimidating. To everyone outside of the Milky Way, those from in it are deemed a threat. Aside from that one heroic act of killing Rogar, a Wayan as well, I might add, the majority of the galactic cluster see you, and by extension your people, as the bad guys. The Sentinel scoffed and retorted, What are they, idiots? The Andromedans were working with Rogar. I don't know if you remember that, or everyone knew, besides you, which I really hope that you did know, because I'd like to think you're intelligent, that we were only working with him to destroy him from the inside. You did know that, right? Aggro said. You and Rogar both were a powerful defending force for the Milky Way that the Andromedans could not surpass. Rogar's gone now. You're our only roadblock. I had a hunch. The Sentinel stepped back. Why didn't you tell me? We tried to get you to join our side earlier, Vistor reminded him. And when you declined, we treated you the same as Rogar, as a threat. Conchna even tried to exterminate you, Aggro pointed out. But he killed my friend instead. She was innocent, the Sentinel lashed back. She was harboring time, which made her a secondary target. Rogar was after her, and if she were eliminated, then he had no means to acquire control over time. I didn't agree with it myself, but I can't ignore the strategic importance of... Aggro faltered, trying to explain their actions. Was it her fault that a celestial being decided to possess her? No. The Sentinel was getting angry, his hands lit aflame. There's not a chance in the universe that I would join your side. The Sentinel dimmed his flames. But we don't need another war. We can avoid conflict altogether. I'll just go home and leave you alone. I think you're forgetting a crucial detail, Sentinel. IS-72, that planet belongs to us. Daru entrusted all his property to me in the event of his death. Did he ever legally sell you the planet? Vistor asked. It always goes back to land, doesn't it? Do you really need that specific planet? There are an infinite amount for you to choose from. Not any that have cities and infrastructure prepackaged with our names already on them, Vistor laughed. Think about it. He shooed him away with his stubby arms. The Sentinel shared an angry look with Aggro, and he flashed away. He didn't know why, but his first instinct was to teleport back to his Victorian London shack. He set aside his top hat and old broken pocket watch. He wondered where he would stay now. Sure, the war was over, but the need for the Sentinel to exist was still prevalent, and now that people knew he was still around, it gave him even more of a reason to stay on Janistar. Of course, part of him still wanted to run away from his past. He gathered up as many things from his London shack that could hold value in the future, and flashed away to the first place he'd gone to after fleeing London the first time. Los Angeles, 2055. Arriving in Los Angeles, the Sentinel sold all his belongings to a pawn shop for enough money to rent a run-down apartment on the north side of Inglewood. He flashed away with a duffel bag and snuck some of his stuff from the Tempest house without letting Ayla know, but leaving enough behind just in case. He planned to use his apartment as some sort of home base for the time being, until he could come to a final decision of what he would choose to do with his life. He continued to tinker with the box, trying to remake the original within the confined blue shell. Despite his best efforts to ignore the thoughts swimming in his mind about Ilsos, Janistar, and King Vistor, they eventually consumed him. He flashed away, back to the capital on Janistar to inform the leaders of the problem. Of course, the Sentinel hadn't quite answered the question on who was running the planetary government while he was gone. He did know, however, that the building where he would find his answer was in the capital. He came across the building and knocked on the door. It was opened by a presumably human guard. She pointed to a sign hanging around their neck which read, Language? In a few different languages. English, the Sentinel answered. Why are you here? The guard asked. I'm the Sentinel, he answered. The box floated up by him, and the Sentinel's fist lit a flame for a small moment to prove his identity. The guard's eyes widened as she stepped away. She lowered her head. The Sentinel stepped past her and looked around the lobby. He came across the front desk and asked the Lorenian behind it a question. How can I get to the President? He thought to himself. How is this planet run? You mean the President's? The Lorenian asked cheerfully. They're up on the 3rd floor. Thank you. The Sentinel nodded and proceeded to the stairs. He approached the door and knocked, waiting as he thought. President's? The door was opened by a face that hadn't seen the Sentinel, and that the Sentinel himself hadn't seen in years. Her blank expression turned joyous when she saw the time machine floating by the Sentinel's shoulders. Without hesitation, she knew who he was. Sentinel? How'd you know it was me? The Sentinel returned Vax's quick embrace. You were gone for so long. Vax laughed as her hug grew tighter. Is that the Sentinel? A voice called from the office. Yeah, Vax let go. We thought you were dead, Vax exclaimed. Foxtrot. The Sentinel nodded, greeting Foxtrot as he walked into the room. He noticed a map of the capital sprawled over the central desk in the room, held down on the desk by a Janistar globe paperweight. So are you two the presidents? He asked them. For now, Foxtrot answered. The planet's still figuring things out, and so Vax and I have been organizing things until people figure out how they want to do things. Vax stayed close by the Sentinel as he approached the desk. An election's being held right now, so hopefully we won't need to be doing this thankless job much longer, Foxtrot said. So, why were you gone for so long? You gave us a scare, Vax asked. After the war, I relapsed. Amara died before it was over, and I ran away from it all. I guess. I don't know. I spent 4 years in Victorian London before I came back. I'm so sorry. Vax comforted the Sentinel. What happened, if you don't mind me asking? Conchna was going to shoot me, and Amara jumped in front of me. She was gone before I could do anything. The Sentinel looked down, tapping his foot for a few moments before he coughed and rocked back on his heels. But enough about me, Vax. You've clearly been busy. Oh, you don't even know the half of it. I ran into you a couple times when I was a full-time astronaut. Ran into Foxtrot, got into a whole deal with him. We're good friends now. We're the presidents, too, so that's cool, if not a bit stressful. Definitely. The Sentinel smiled. You know, all this time I was waiting. In the back of my mind, I knew you couldn't be dead. I called for you desperately a few times, but even when you did show up, it was never the version of you I was hoping for. And finally, here you are. Guess I just had to wait for you to come to me. Yeah, I didn't have the box with me for a while there. Sorry about that. Sounds like you had fun, though. Talking to Vax transported the Sentinel right back into his old life. What have you guys been up to? As presidents, I mean. The Sentinel pulled up a chair and sat in front of the desk. Well, Foxtrot sat down as well, across from him. Fairly recently, the Ilsos government wiped out the clone army. Yeah, the Sentinel nodded, acknowledging that he remembered. My good friend survived, but he didn't last long. The Ilsos government cut ties with Andrometron. Last thing I knew when I was last on Ilsos was that Conchna's working on a super weapon. And then here we get news that Vistor wants control over Janistar. So you know too? The Sentinel straightened in his seat. Wait, how do you know? Foxtrot questioned. They want this planet because of this. Vax pointed to the map, at a red circle around an empty patch of dirt. A material called Calcarus B. Mostly indestructible. Janistar's the only currently existing reserve of the stuff as far as we and they know. Vistor and the Andromedans of Ilsos only know about it because they've seen it. Apparently they've figured out a way to bypass the whole planetary shield system and everything. We still haven't figured it out. Foxtrot elaborated. Oh, the Sentinel jumped slightly. I know about that. They have some sort of wormhole portal thing that's always open. Where? Vax was quick to ask. The Sentinel held out his hand invitingly, reaching his other hand to grasp the small box floating by him. Vax and Foxtrot took his hand and they flashed away to the bar the Sentinel visited earlier. He directed them down the road and passed by the intersection, finally stopping by the alleyway. This way they'd know exactly where it was. The Sentinel approached the wall and pressed on the center brick button, causing the camouflaged wall to return to normal and slide open, revealing the portal. I wouldn't necessarily know how to close it, though. I work with wormholes all the time, but I still don't get how they work, the Sentinel admitted. At least we know where it is. Foxtrot stared at the portal, thinking. We'll keep an eye on it for the time being, Vax assured them both. In the meantime, Sentinel, have you heard there's a new lab we built for you? No, I just got here. Well, that defeats the purpose of buying an apartment in LA, then. When you were gone, I was convinced you weren't dead. Daru insisted before he died that one be built for you, as per request from his old friend Kogar. The Sentinel flinched at the mention of an old friend. They knew each other? Do you want to see it? It's done. Vax turned to face the Sentinel. The Sentinel hesitated. Actually, I'll get my stuff from LA first. I'll be back later today. Sure thing. Door's unlocked, it's on the edge of the city. Come back soon, Sentinel. Vax smiled. Thanks. The Sentinel nodded and flashed away.